Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 726. Preparations are very important. Suddenly, Klein had a familiar feeling. It felt like every tree, every leaf, every rock, every blade of grass wanted him dead. Upon seeing the rubbish comprising of fragments and paper lunge at him in a strange web, his body suddenly collapsed into a paper figurine. So! The arrow-like branches impaled the paper figurines and landed into the distance. As for the strange net, it immediately enveloped everything within into a ball as it gently squirmed. Klein's body appeared to the side about 8 meters away. He knew that the attack he was worried about had finally descended upon him. He didn't make any observations or show any hesitation. Raising his right palm, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the adventurer's harmonica. The situation he had encountered had made him realize that the attacker was likely a demigod from the Rose school of thought. It was an enemy he was currently unable to defend against. The one who had been pursuing Sharon back then gave him a similar feeling. At this moment, the paper figurines in his pocket suddenly flew out as they plastered over his face, one after another, layer after layer. At the same time, Klein's sleeves automatically tightened as they bound both his arms, preventing his palms from reaching down. His Tarabas shirt and brown jacket were tightening like a bear giving him a hug. In seconds he was bound on the spot by his clothes, trousers, and shoes. His face was covered with paper figurines, as his ribs were on the brink of fracturing. He found it abnormally difficult to breathe. Klein was mentally prepared and was equipped with rich combat experience, so he didn't panic. His right thumb and middle finger, which weren't affected, touched each other as he snapped his fingers. At his ham, scarlet flames immediately soared up, burning the tightly bound trousers clean before spreading upwards and downwards. Seizing this opportunity, Klein bent his knees and jumped up with great difficulty, like a cannonball that weakly fell to the ground moments after being launched, as he lunged to his right. In midair, he snapped his fingers again. This time, the sleeve by the right arm joint was ignited. As for the spot where he was originally standing, the green weeds suddenly withered as the blackened ground suddenly turned white as if it had been weathered by the elements. This attack was silent and deadly, without any forewarning. Klein knew that his enemy was powerful and that staying in the same spot would likely result in him suffering an attack he couldn't resist. Therefore, he first removed the influence on his legs. If he hadn't done so, he would have already been heavily injured and lose his ability to do combat. He might have even perished. With a smacking sound, 2 spots around Klein's sleeves ignited. His right palm finally had the freedom to move as he reached into his pocket and grabbed the adventurer's harmonica. Plop! He fell to the ground, rolling as he immediately stopped himself with his right hand to bounce up. His left palm, which wore a human-skinned glove, snapped its fingers. This time, his target was the paper figurines that were plastered over his face to prevent him from breathing. Pa! The paper figurines burned up as the scarlet tongues of fire burned Klein's hair. At that moment, a scene suddenly flashed in his mind. An icicle had formed and was speeding right for his head like a thin, gloomy green arrow. Due to its speed, it was translucent itself, making it usually impossible to discover it. But even though Klein's danger premonition was triggered, it was a little too late. This was because his clothes were still affecting his mobility. It was too late for him to dodge the attack. A thought flashed through his mind as he barely bent his back. His upper torso was bent backward, and he moved quite significantly to his right. Oof! The thin, cold ice arrow struck his left chest, instantly shattering the brown jacket and white round collar shirt, which were located there as they scattered into the air. However, this lethal ice arrow didn't continue heading forward. This was because in its way was a book with a dark brown cover. The book appeared ordinary, and it was bound into a book with commonly seen yellowish-brown goatskin, but it didn't shatter like the 2 pieces of clothing. There wasn't even a hole pricked open. Grozel's Travels. This was an item that even the sea god Scepter's lightning storm imbued with some powers of the mysterious space had failed to damage. Last night, the telegram of "I see you" gave Klein such a fright that he undoubtedly reinforced his protective countermeasures. He prepared every method he could think of. Apart from hiding the book at his vital spot, his other pocket had the iron cigar case which stored the influence of the corrupted true creator. Once things went bad, he would dispel the wall of spirituality, throw out the item, and see if it would draw the attention of the true creator. He hoped that he would send his powerful subordinates to make this situation more chaotic. He knew that even evil gods like the true creator hated the mother tree of desire. After withstanding the ice arrow, Klein fell to the ground while somersaulting to the side. He then brought the adventurer's harmonica to his lips and blew hard into it. At that moment, his face was turning a little black due to the burning of the paper figurines, but due to flame controlling, he wasn't injured. Then, he felt that the clothes on his left arm, waist, thighs, neck, and legs were restored to normal, giving him newfound freedom. At the moment he blew the harmonica, he quickly activated his spirit vision. He saw Miss Messenger walk out of the void with 4 blonde, red-eyed heads in hand. They automatically turned and stared at the same spot. One of the heads grunted as it opened its mouth and began drawing in air. A cold wind hummed as a figure was forcibly pulled out from a green tree 100 meters away from Klein. This figure failed to maintain his difficult-to-detect state as he rapidly turned half transparent and half corporeal. He was the wrinkled elder with white, thin hair. His facial features had the traits of the people of the southern continent. Just as his brown eyes reflected Rionette Tinker, his brows pricked up. Then, he didn't hesitate to open his mouth as though he was about to deliver an extreme curse that he had been preparing for a long time. At this moment, another one of the heads which Rionette Tinker was holding had opened its mouth as well, as though it was making a silent screech. With that, nothing happened inside the forest. When Shanks saw this, he hurriedly turned his head to look at Klein, who had yet to react in time when a figure with white, thin hair and exaggerated wrinkles appeared in his eyes. His mind instantly turned cold. Although his thoughts weren't impeded, he had lost control over his body. All he could do was watch the white-haired elder vanish as he turned to face Miss Messenger. The 2 heads which Rionette Tinker carried suddenly flew out and appeared before Klein. One of them opened its mouth as it drew in air, while the other's red eyes turned dark as its teeth turned long and sharp, phasing between an incorporeal and corporeal state. Klein saw the translucent elder with white, thin hair being forcefully pulled out from his body before Miss Messenger's head with the long teeth that bit at his shoulder, tearing out an object that appeared both like a spirit body and a physical body. Shanks frowned without screaming. Its figure abruptly vanished as it leaped to a spot with a glass fragment 100 meters away. Following that, he seemed to be pursued by formless hands and enemies. He kept phasing into shallow puddles of water, the eyes of animals, the dew on plants, etc. Finally, he was able to catch a breather, and still, Klein was feeling a little stiff and cold from the inside out. Phew! Shanks entered the spirit world and walked out again. In his hand was a moist, sticky, palm-sized doll. This figure's face only had a hole as it was inhaling and exhaling a grayish-white fog which Klein found familiar. Shanks didn't hesitate as he stuffed the doll into his mouth. Upon seeing this, Rionette Tinker's other 2 heads left her palm, and like before, flew towards Shanks at a fast speed, arriving nearly instantly. However, Shanks had already begun transforming. His body turned black as his skin scrunched up and water began seeping out. His hair, brows, and other parts began withering and dropping. Following that, his limbs grew long and thin. In just a second, Shanks seemed to be assimilated by the doll, becoming a huge, black, moist infant with long forelimbs and swollen, shriveled skin. His eyes, nose, mouth, and ears moved from their original locations to the middle of his face as though they were gathering together to form a brand new organ. His skin, limbs, and newly formed organ brought an indescribable sense of mystery and wickedness. Just a single look had made his body, which had just recovered from the coldness, feel extremely itchy. Red spots protruded from his skin as a result of the clumps of fine granules. His eyes undoubtedly suffered a piercing pain. He instinctively closed them tight as tears were forced out. By the time he calmed himself with cogitation and opened his eyes again, he realized that Miss Messenger and the Rose School of Thought's demigod had vanished. However, Klein's spiritual intuition told him that they were nearby. They were in an intense battle shuttling between the real world and the spirit world. Be it the dropping of the leaves, the shaking of the weeds, the crawling of the worms, and the fleeing of the wild beasts, all of them represented each and every clash. As his mind whirred, Klein took out Death Knell and tapped his left thumb on the first segment of his index finger twice. Countless illusory thin threads appeared in his eyes, making him see objects that usually couldn't be seen with his normal vision or spirit vision. 2 blobs were flying around him, and the dense black bundles of threads that entangled with each other were Rionette Tinker and the Rose School of Thought's demigod. Apart from these, Klein also discovered that a blob of illusory black threads was rapidly approaching him. It would stop from time to time, so as to avoid the intense battle between the 2 demigods. There's another enemy? An enemy who was hiding in the distance awaiting the results, but hasn't decided to participate in the battle? Anyways, anyone who's stealthily approaching in such a situation must be an enemy. Klein's eyes moved slightly as he cocked the death knell and lowered it naturally to put it into a state for lethal attack. Then, he pretended as though he hadn't detected the bundle of illusory black threads, stuffed his left palm into his pocket, and grabbed a gold coin. He made it tumble between his fingers as though he was in a divination state. He was doing this to disrupt the approacher's spiritual intuition for danger. After losing his paper figurines, this was the only method he had. After patiently waiting for 2 seconds, when the other party was within shooting range, Klein's eyes turned solemn as he suddenly raised his right hand, aimed, and pulled the trigger.